All right, everyone. Hello, welcome back to OneSoccer. I'm your host today, Josh Deming, joined by my colleague Alex Gonge-Ruzik, and we are here today because the roster just dropped for the match against Trinidad and Tobago coming up on March the 23rd. And Alex, I think we're going to have a lot to discuss today. My X is blowing up. I'm assuming yours is as well. The chat, already 39 people here. I'm expecting more because Biello, I believe, surprised just about everyone. I had pretty much 0.0% hope that this squad was going to look much different than, the old guard. But the changing of the guard actually has happened. I'm going to pull up the roster. If you haven't seen it already, it will be up on the screen shortly. And he surprised me, man. Like, I've been so vocal about, I just think Biello, especially up until this match, would go with kind of like what Herdman did, like the old guard. I personally didn't see any way around it. Every squad I made up for hypotheticals, I included the old guard. I always had people saying, Josh, move on. And I would always say, there's no point of talking about what could be, because I know Biello will probably do this. I'm an idiot. I'm wrong. Alex, give me your initial reaction this morning, waking up to this news.
Yeah, I guess Mauro Biello just dunked all over you, but no, I guess it's no one's mad at that. I think this was the sort of call you wanted to see from Mauro Biello in October, but better late than never, right? Better late than never, especially what's on the line. I think we kind of talked about this in November too. We're like, look, you went with your veterans, fine. They were who you trusted, they who you thought could get you over the line. They didn't. We kind of also said, like, look, you got 4 months now. When it comes to March, bring in these informed guys, bring in these youngsters, because when the old guard wasn't able to get the job done in that game, it kind of sent the message too that not only are some of those veterans kind of moving on and there's different phases of their career, maybe not at the same level they were before, but when there's youngsters knocking on the door, you kind of have to let them in, especially with 2026, right? Like, okay, if 2026 wasn't there, you're still thinking about qualifying for 26. Again, different story, because okay, you lean on some of those veterans and build day by day. With 2026 there, it's a unique opportunity because you kind of have to think about what's 2-3 years away while also managing what's now. And I think it's like we mentioned, there's a few guys that when it came down to in goal, for example, Milan Borjan, very loyal servant to the national team. It's definitely going to be weird to not have him there. You would have wondered if he would have stuck around in some sort of leadership role. But with the Jonathan Sirois knocking on the door, you could argue if, Sirois has already kind of passed him now, certainly in 2-3 years he will. Focus on that. I think that's what's exactly great about this squad, is that it rewards who's informed today. It looks great in that regard. But then you're also looking like at a Defugerol and some of these other guys. They're going to be around in 2026 and they have a big job to do. And it's nice that they're going to finally get this opportunity to embed and work towards that all together. So it's huge because it's probably the best team that gives them a chance of winning in a week and a half, which is what you need. But it also is a team that's filled with guys who are looking to contribute in a few years.
This is honestly probably one of my favorite squads I've ever seen because, Alex, you and I watch a lot of our Canadian players spread across the globe. You have a written series, Canadians Abroad. I do a visual, like audio, and you've used to be a part of it. Like we're so intertwined with these players, and we've always, despite whatever squad has been released, there's always been a few players that, because it's opinions, that we believe has been left out. But I've never, like I said, I've never felt like I've been so slapped in the face looking at a roster before, because almost every player that I feel like deserves to be there is. Ali Ahmed is the obvious one. We'll get into him in a bit. But other than that, this is, like you said, it's a great squad. No Hoylett. That is a massive call. I mean, he just found a club as well. He mentioned in some of his early interviews that he was looking to be a part of a Copa America and even hopefully a World Cup in 2026. A big statement leaving him out. Steven Vittoria, we've talked about center back issues and how he's still one of the, at least in the past, was one of the guys who was pretty reliable for the men's national team. He's having a very, very poor season. He's getting older, 37 years old. And then, of course, Borjan, which is the biggest issue, I think, with his national teams in terms of the fans and what they want to see, and it's time to move on. And in this one single match, I think that Biello could have went with the old guard. And the excuse is, guys, like, this is a one-off match, let's get through this. Let's qualify for the Copa America, and let's see what happens. let's not skip around the fact that this is a bit of a risk for him. He is introducing a lot of new players. He went with 5 strikers. 4, like I said, absolutely deserve to be there. David Laren, Ugbo, and Bear, just considering their form. But he even snuck in a Jason Russell-Rowe, who, again, 5 strikers. I don't know if he'll be seeing the field, but it's interesting to see him get in there. And then the rest of the squad is just filled out with players that are pretty much, in terms of Canadians, playing at the highest level and playing well. This squad absolutely blew my mind. But I do want to touch on Ali Ahmed because I'm excited. I've been getting a ton of comments on it, Alex. So you have a little theory around maybe why he wasn't here. So can you explain to all the viewers out there, and especially our West Coast fans?
Yeah, look, I think pretty much based on what I've seen of this squad, look, it's pretty good 23. I think if I were to change anything, of course, we're always going to be nitpicky around the edges. I would have called in Ali Ahmed. I would have maybe seen for Lucas McNaughton just because I think he's been in phenomenal form, but I'm not mad with the center back choices. I think they're all pretty good and deserving as well. Like Waterman, fantastic to see him get a deserved shot. Hopefully he plays. And also I think, Jaden Nelson / Theo Corbianu both could have made sense for a Jason Russell-Rowe, but look, those are to be nitpicky. But as for Ali Ahmed, while the other two are maybe more personal choices, right? Like picking a Russell-Rowe or whatever. I just imagine this was probably one where it came down to talking with the Whitecaps because he's still coming off a sports hernia. I mean, look, he obviously had a fantastic 30 minutes I think it was 28 minutes off the bench against the Earthquakes on the weekend, scored a fantastic goal, flicks it up over the defender, bangs it home. He looked great. But at the same time, we still have to remember he's working his way up to recovery. And unfortunately, with the nature of MLS, the Whitecaps have a game on March 23rd. They play at home to RSL. Big game. It's a Western Conference game. Got to get early points on the board. Andres Cubas already just got called up to the Paraguayan national team. So they're going to be a bit light in midfield. I imagine there's some more calls, like a Javane Brown might get called in. That's, that hurts you in a full back depth because, of course, Jamaica has a big game. There's possibility for another 1 or 2 to get called up. It might just make sense for Ali Ahmed because at that point, you imagine this week against on the road to Dallas, he probably plays a 50-60 maybe as a starter. That based on that kind of trajectory, he would be aiming for 90 minutes in that RSL game. If he's coming to play with Canada, especially with just one game in the camp, it's hard to imagine him playing more than 30, 60 if he starts, right? Just because there are a lot of names in this squad. Some of them you also want to throw in and give a look for the first time. I wonder if it's just like, look, Ali Ahmed, you're a big part of this national team. Like it's a Copa America, you're in the squad. You should be. You've deserved it. But in this situation, especially with the one-off game, especially with the timing with the Whitecaps where he has a game to play, I wonder if they said, look, it just makes more sense to get that 90, get up to full fitness, and focus on being in that squad. So that, look, when it comes to June saying there's that friendly against the Netherlands, Ali Ahmed's playing a big role and he's fit and he's not potentially coming to this and risking a bit of a setback. He's still in that injury recovery process. So I think that's maybe something important to note, that in a situation like this, it's probably the same reason why Richie Larea was left home. Of course, he's got a hamstring issue that he's dealing with, but I'm sure they could have pushed to bring him in. And I think it's something where in those cases, those sorts of guys, no reason to rush, right?
Absolutely. And Atakubi and Larea, I believe there was a report out there that they do have an injury, which is why they're not in the squad. But Alex, I'm going to hit on a couple comments here, guys. So if you have any questions about the squad, we're going to try to go position by position right now because I've already seen a few comments of, who's going to be the starting keeper. I'm curious to see what Alex thinks. I think my guy, and I feel pretty confident about it, but I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm asking you guys, rate this squad out of 10. Is Biello cooking? For me, I would honestly say like 9.5. Like there's a little things, and I've seen a couple comments in there of little chop and changes, but for the most part, I said it, and I said it before. I said it last night. I would like to see Biello make a statement. And that's where I've been really critical about him, because he's talked about how he wants this job, and he's in the running. But he needs to do something different. Like he can't just keep, the insanity thing. Grab the same squads, and try to expect different results. He needed to go out there and put a stamp on his squad, make it different, try to mold it in the way of the future. And to do it before a one knockout game like this, single knockout, I think kind of speaks volumes to him. And I give him a lot of credit for that. So now it's time to take a look at the squad, Alex. Between the sticks, we have the keepers that I don't think there's much debate. It's the ones that we've been talking about for a long time. St. Clair, Crepeau, and of course Sirwa, which is very exciting to see him get it up, finally earn this call. But for me, I'm expecting Crepeau to be the starter. I think you could have an argument in terms of form of they're all playing great, but I just feel because of Crepeau has been around the national team for so long. I think we've talked about how how he plays between the sticks, how it would fit the type of style that this Canadian side should go for. Very good with the ball at his feet, great shot stopper as well. I just feel like he's the natural replacement. Obviously, St. Clair and Sirwa being younger. Do you see any way that maybe one of the other two starts this match? And especially because it is just a single elimination match, maybe you go with the little bit more experienced hand. What are your thoughts?
I think it's going to be a fascinating question. I think Crepeau starts. I think that's probably just what makes most sense. He's kind of been deserving of this opportunity for a while now. He's in strong form. And I think from here, you kind of build a competition, right? I think if this is your three going forward for now, build up that competition because, of course, Sirwa, he's got all sorts of potential. You want to give him a look. I think it would just be bold for his first call to get thrown in right away. I think this is a good start just to have him in. And, maybe it's something where in friendlies down the road, there's Nations League this fall, right? Those are always great games for maybe a different keeper to come in. I definitely would love to see Sirwa get a look there. Ditto with St. Clair, right? Like, I'd love to see him get a look. For example, you got a friendly Netherlands. Love to see 45-45, maybe even for Crepeau St. Clair. Like, kind of give these chances a real look. But I think in this game, you got to remember, Crepeau has pretty good experience. He was fantastic in the 21 Gold Cup, big games against Mexico, Costa Rica. He stood up with no Boyan around in the World Cup qualifying. Like, remember when he had to get called into the Azteca because Boyan was dealing with, I think, COVID at the time with his club. Crepeau was fantastic in the Azteca, only allowed one goal in a 1-1 draw. Like, he's got the experience. He's he's 29, I think, at this point. It's not that unreasonable to tip him for this. He's won, he's been in 2 MLS Cup finals, won one. He's played in he didn't play in a Champions Cup final because he was injured, but he's been around in that environment with LAFC over the last few years. Of course, now made this move to Portland. I think Crepeau is ready to step up and play in this one-off game, and I think then from there the idea is that you kind of let the other two embed in. But that's kind of how I view it. I think St. Clair, of course, could get that shot. He did get a look at the Gold Cup. I think it feels like it's Crepeau's turn.
I agree. Like I said, I unless I'm missing something, I don't think there's probably much of a debate of who earned like the spots here, these three keepers. But between the three, I just every point we just try to make, I do think it will be Crepeau. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. So now let's take a look on to the defenders. I think I'm just going to list them all because I need to, it's not actually in order. So we got Waterman, who I'm going to get you to touch on first there, but obviously a bit of a surprise for me. I wasn't expecting him, not that he doesn't deserve it. But we got Waterman in there. Obviously, Alistair Johnston, DeFougerolles, Cornelius, Bombito, which I know, Alex, will excite you. You just did a big piece on why he should be playing center back as well and could be a big piece for the men's national team. Am I missing anyone? I guess we could maybe slot Davies in there. That could be a conversation for a little bit later in the stream. But how many? So Bombito, Cornelius, DeFougerolles are all center backs.
Waterman and
Miller. And I missed Colombo. Okay, so we have 5 center backs. From that, and considering we don't have Richie Larea and Adekubi, do you think that means that Biello could be playing or looking to play in a back 5? Because considering we took 5 strikers and we have 5 center backs with a lack of kind of wingers, does it look like maybe that 3-5-2 is more likely? Especially, I guess you'd have Buchanan and Davies as maybe your 2 wing backs, or do you not think I'm reading a little too much into it?
I see it 3-5-2. I think, look, there's a possibility for like a 4-3-3 just because there's I counted 3 natural wingers, plus you could play Davies. I just think with all the center backs, it makes sense to go with the 5, ditto with the 2, with the strikers. So I kind of see a 3-5-2 situation. My guess for the center backs, this sort it's tough because it's genuinely no Vittoria, right? It's weird to write out a squad without him. My best guess at first glance is Miller and Cornelius both start, with Cornelius in the middle, as we've already seen, Miller on the left. And then I think it'll come down to Bombito or Waterman for that right center back spot. Bombito's been playing right center back in a back 4 for Colorado. I've been fascinated to watch him lately. He's so athletic, but he's very good on the ball, very composed. So good defending 1v1 on this weekend against RSL. There's like Colorado went up 2-1, and then there's like 3 moments where Bombito, one of them was against Chicho Arango, where it really impressed me. Like 1v1 could have been very dangerous, just shut it down. Like with his speed, his ability to just shepherd those guys out of dangerous areas. He'd be perfect in that right center back role. I think Waterman is also a fascinating option because he's been really quietly good with Montreal in the middle of a back three. And he's played outside of a back three before as well. So I think Waterman can slob in very competently there. Although I would love to see a Waterman get a shot in the middle too. So like maybe there's also a scenario where you could see Miller, Waterman, Bombito. But I just think in this game, especially with the lack of a Vittoria, the lack of a Borjan, I think you just kind of keep that familiarity and go for like Miller, Cornelius, and then kind of take your pick, right, based on what you think Trinidad can hurt you. If you think that they've got that 1v1 speed, which they do have some options in that regard, go Bombito. But if you feel like you just want to hold the ball a little more and, bring a little more experience too, because Waterman is a bit older and he's been in the camp before, I'd say go Waterman. That's probably how I'd split it.
So what about Johnson though in a back three? Do you think they end up pushing him up maybe to wing back role? Or are you waiting to leave that there and maybe push Tejan somewhere else, or do you probably?
I think because that's it. I'd love to see, for example, an Alistair Johnson go back to wing back because he's been playing as an outside fullback for Celtic, and he just looks so much better when he gets involved at the crossing and getting up the field. Like, of course, he's good on the ball in a back three, which is always why you look at it. But as we've seen recently too, like teams are also starting to exploit some of those weaknesses he has in his game, and it's not their fault. For example, he's not the most proficient aerially. Like over his 4 or 5 seasons across MLS and Celtic now, like he's never really been a guy who's won more than 50% aerial duels. Look, he's a 5'11" fullback. I'm not expecting him to be that guy. Yeah. And like you look at what he brings going forward, we always forget. Like, remember that season in Montreal where he played as a wingback and had like 5 goals, 5 assists? He has that in his locker. He shows it for Celtic too when they do let him get up the field and be more involved. I'd love to see him play as more of a wingback, but I think that would be good because it could give you a bit of a valve for Davies on the other side, right? Davies can almost play with a little more freedom, knowing like, oh yeah, I got more of a guy who can get forward in Johnson, but a guy who's also always thinking about the transition. Look, then you can say, where does that put Buchanan? What I do wonder is if what we've seen, for example, in the last game, we saw bouts of Jonathan David as a 10. Could it make sense to keep Eustachio Kone, put David as the 10, Laren up front, and you could, for example, put a Buchanan up front, right? Kind of in a free role where you can play on the left and cut inside and let Davies run by him. He can play on the right like he used to back in New England. You have that flexibility if you think Buchanan's not fully fit too. So of course he's probably pretty fit from inter-training, but he's lacking match sharpness. You've got Ike Ugbo's banging in the goals. You got Theo Bair. I do wonder if they kind of go for something with that because of course in midfield you have Piet, you have Azorio. But I think in a game like this, you probably want a bit more offensive weapons too, because you're going to hold a little more of the ball against TNT. You're going to have chances, and having guys who can help you break down defense, be it if you think it's the speed of Buchanan or the just proficiency of a Ugbo or a Bear. There are options there, and I think putting Johnson at wing back kind of facilitates all that, even if it's a bit bold and different from what we've seen.
I didn't tweet it out yet, but I built a 4-2-3-1 system, so I might. It's similar to what you said. Obviously, David tucks in. You have Buchanan, and I got Liam Miller in the squad out wide. The Kone and Eustachio kind of in the double pivot. Johnson would be right back. Davies sliding to left back. We could talk about it in a little bit, but it's interesting because I was agreeing. I was trying to see with this new look of what the squad could potentially look like, and I was having some fun with it. But I feel like BL is going to go with the 3-5-2, and Johnson will be that outside right center back. But who knows now? I mean, the man's full of surprises. I can't confidently say that anymore. I felt like before I could confidently pretty much, predict. And I think I did predict his last couple starting 11s. But, he's throwing me all over the place right now. But I'm going to get into a couple of comments here before we move on to the midfield. Andrew says the only gripe is with no Hoylett. Will set piece taker be missed off the bench? It is interesting. Like I said, Hoylett signing for Aberdeen, he did an interview saying, he's still very motivated for the national team and he wants to play at the Copa America and wants to play at the 2026 World Cup. I do think Hoylett has got a lot of quality. He just came off a very impressive performance for Aberdeen where he was involved in all 3 of their goals in a 3-1 win. there's still quality there, but in terms of set pieces, I mean, Hoylett's probably not a starter, even if he was in this squad anymore. So I would like to always see Eustachio over the ball. And I mean, if not, it seems like Davies keeps finding his way in there. And off the bench, yeah, I mean, Hoylett is always great over set pieces, but I don't think it's a reason to really keep him in the squad if they think that there's better options. So I'm not overly upset without Hoylett in this roster. Does he have quality over ball? Absolutely. But I mean, as long as Steph's on the field, which he should be in a match like this, I'm more than comfortable with him there. This is my favorite question so far, Alex. And let me know, guys, in the chat, who do you think? And Alex, I'm gonna roughly build a starting 11 because I'm a little torn on this. But who do you think the captain is going to be? Now, if we go with the roster that off the top of my head in the starting 11 I'm looking at, I got Crepeau in net. I was gonna go John. This is what I think Biello would do, but I don't know anymore. I would go Johnston, Cornelius, Miller, the back three, Buchanan, Davies, the wing backs, and this is where I think the captain may come into play. You have Eustachio, Kone, and then I think Osorio may start, and he may wear the armband with David and Laren up front. I could see a shout maybe for Crepeau to wear the armband. And then I think there's outside picks, but they're fun picks like a Johnston or a Eustachio. I would love to see one of those guys take on the armband. I don't know. I just have a feeling that if Osorio starts, he will wear it. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you also have Piet, who could just play as a 6 and free up Eustachio and Kone to play a little more free. Piet's worn the armband before too, so I could see that. But also, look, I think this could be a chance for new leaders to step up, right? I think that's something that's kind of a theme with, there's a lot of veterans missing, but there's still a lot of veterans in it. I mean, you mentioned just a bunch. Osorio, he's a veteran, like 50 plus caps, in his 30s now. Sam Piet as well, longtime veteran of this team. Crepeau, yeah, he hasn't been playing a lot, but he's been around for 6-7 plus years now in the fold. There is definitely leadership across the board, and look, I think this is something where, personally, I was kind of pondering this as well when we first saw the squad, like long term as well. Like it's been clear, for example, that this is Alphonso Davies' team. This has been his team for 4, 5, 6 years. Stefan Eustachio ditto now, right? Ever since he's come in, he's been such a rock. Tajon Buchanan, he's stepped up. He's part of that leadership group. Alistair Johnson as well. You've seen him on and off the field step up. Like, especially now with no Vittoria, Borjan, Hoylett there, like the 3 most regular captains you've had over the last four years, not named Atiba Hutchinson. Like, I think this is also a moment where you just look, this is straight up a time for any of those names I just mentioned to shine. Like, if you think of Davies is right, like you see it in international football all the time, right? Like the same way France just gave it to an Mbappe maybe a bit earlier than they would have thought. A Griezmann was right there. They just felt he was ready. I could see a Davies get that shot. Maybe that's what Davies needs just to, find that next level, even with Canada, just to wear the armband. Of course, we've given Eustachio a big shout. I think he would look great with an armband on. I think he's shown that he has that kind of just quiet leadership on the field that you can rely on. Heck, Jonathan Davids kind of fits that mold where, look, you've seen it. He's been wearing the armband at times for Lille when there's no Benjamin André. Like, he's really stepped up as a leader there. He can do it. I feel like there's options as well. And I think I'd love to see that because, look, I think, of course, Osorio, Piet, you kind of know they're captains in this squad right now with how young it is. But I feel like this has been those Davies, David, Eustachio team for a few years now. So why not kind of elevate their responsibility and show, like, look, these guys are going to be locks for 2026. Heck, I'd bet on, David and Davies being there for 2030 if they're able to make it. So, like, why not throw them that armband now and really allow them to step up with this responsibility? And I think the fact that no Vittoria, Borjan, and Hoylett are around, I think that's kind of also a sign that, look, we trust you enough that we're not calling in these guys we really consider to be leaders. I think that's a big vote of confidence because you're not, I imagine you're not looking at this squad and be like, oh yeah, Osorio, Piet, who one of which might not play, both of which might not play, and be like, all right, yeah, you guys are the leaders of this squad, which they are. They're definitely part of that group. I think this is maybe a sign of some of the newer guys stepping into that leadership group.
It was an excellent question. I'll make it quick. And Alex, you just kind of touched on it. Like, what my gut tells me is that if Piet or Osorio start, they will wear the armband. That's just what my gut tells me, and it wouldn't surprise me. However, like you just said, and whether Biello wants to do this or not, and that's kind of the other thing, like, if Biello was here locked in for like a 2, 3, 4 year contract, right? Like, then maybe he would make that decision on like a Davies or Eustachio. because it's one match, if Osorio and Piet find their way into the starting 11, I think the easiest thing is to just give it to them because they've done it before. However, again, bold Biello right now, maybe he goes a different route. I think the captain for the national team going forward, whether it's with Biello or with a new manager, like we all just are kind of saying and what the chat is saying, pick someone who's an important part of this national team that will be in the starting 11 every single time. Not someone like Piet or Osorio, who we are even contemplating whether they'll be in the starting 11. You want to go with Davies, great. I think the choice should be Eustachio. I wouldn't even be mad if it was Johnson, even Jonathan David. I just think that probably Eustachio for me is the guy. He's going to be playing every minute possibly available. So same as Davies, but I just think he just brings that little bit more of a leadership and I kind of like my midfielders to wear the armband, but I'm a little picky with it. But I would also understand Davies for the reason of, maybe it'll give him that little extra boost. He loves playing for his country. He's a generational talent right now. You see, like you just mentioned, massive players who wear the armband. It wouldn't be shocking if he wears it. But whoever it is out of those guys, it should be someone who is an important part of this national team in the starting 11 going forward. Because I think, like we said, Alex, how many captains have we seen? When Hutch is in, it's him. Then we've seen Borjan. Then we've seen Vittoria. We've seen Hoylett. We just said we've seen Piet. Like it kind of gets tossed all over the place depending on who's available. And I want just a little bit more consistency with my captain. But
yeah, well, look, I agree with you, right? Like it's something where ideally you pick someone long term, and that's why. Like I honestly, you can make good arguments for both. I agree. If I'm voting, of course, we're not in the locker room. We don't know the dynamics because all of that plays such a big role. But I'd vote Eustachio, right? He's got the quiet leader. Like he seemed well. That's it. He's a soft spoken, but you can tell he leads. He wants to be a leader of people. He wants to take things on his back and play. I think that's the exact sort of captain you want. But yeah, I also wonder like for Davies, because one thing we also have to remember with Davies, like he's turning 24 this year. He's been with this national team for since he was 16. It's been 8 years since he's been with the national team, since 2017. He's been at Bayern for 5 years. Like he's had these moments to learn and to grow as a leader. And I think Vince makes a good point in the chat I see where you're kind of saying with Davies, maybe at times it's been, he hasn't always shown that leadership with Canada, sometimes but also we've also said it before, like for example, some of those moments like Hero Ball, the big controversy, it's usually Davies coming at it from a right place. Something like this could also be the moment for him to be like, look, I'm about to be 24 this year. I've been with this national team. I'm going to be with it for a while. It's my chance to step up, be a leader, really, especially for that new generation of guys coming in who are all looking up to him, wanting to learn from him, having seen him in these world-class environments, especially if he makes a move to Real Madrid. I feel like this could be something for that next step. So I do wonder, right? Like, 'cause I agree. I think if we're making a choice based on what we know, it's Eustachio, but also what's nice with Eustachio is, he's going to lead no matter what, right? Like he's someone who's always going to be relied upon. And maybe you go somewhere where, you just, you give Davies that armband. So, as the face of the team, he gets that chance to step up and realize like, oh, I'm the captain. Let's lead this ship in the right direction. And maybe that's what he needs, right?
I'm excited. I'm really curious to see what Biello will do. Like I said, there's a safe option there, like we talked about, but it is definitely an interesting debate to be had. And I'm excited, especially when we find out maybe who the more long-term coach is. We'll find out who the more long-term captain is. But Alex, it's time to move on to the midfield. And I guess it's lucky number 5 because I believe there's only 5 midfielders. Let me know again if I missed someone. We have Chouanier, very excited to talk about. Absolutely deserves this call-up. We have Eustachio, we have Kone, we have Piet, and we have Osorio. Did I miss anyone, or is those the 5 midfielders? I believe that's it, right?
Those are the 5.
Those are the 5.
Unless you want to be picky.
No, those are the 5 central midfielders. So let's focus in on Chouanier. We already talked about Ali Ahmed for any of those of you guys who's joining the chat. And if you are here, guys, be sure to drop a like on the stream. Always appreciated. And, of course, let us know what your thoughts are on this squad. Like I said, the biggest issue I've seen with some of the fans is just that Ali Ahmed is not there. Alex gave a good reasoning as to why. But let's talk about the midfielders that are there. And another one that is creating a little bit of debate is Samuel Piet. Alex, so I'm curious, what do you think the number one reason is why Piet was involved? Is it just the lack of a number 6? And like I saw a lot on Twitter, keep calling it Twitter, X, that people are saying Ahmed should be in there, not Piet. The difference is they play different positions. And Canada used to have a center back issue. And I think our center back depth is definitely improving. There's some good center backs like McGraw and McNaughton who weren't in this roster. I do still think Canada has an issue in that holding midfielder position. Some of the best 11s that I'm coming up with has to involve Eustachio playing as a 6, just because there's no really other option. Laturi is not having the greatest season in Scotland. So it kind of just leaves someone like a bit of the old guard, but it's someone who's been around the national team. It's not bad to have a Samuel Piette. So Alex, is that it? Is just the lack of number 6 is why Piette kind of found his way in this roster? Is there someone that you might have looked to replace him with, or do you like the call, assuming that if it wasn't Piette, it had to be a number natural 6?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, apologies right now for any noise that might come through from 8:55 garbage truck delivery. Yeah, I think Piette, that's probably the biggest thing. And I think, look, what also, like, if you're looking at a number 6 at the moment, Samuel Piette's your most informed option, I think, because with Victor Laturi, it's tough. It's very tough to gauge. I've watched a couple of his games at Ross County, and for him, it's frustrating because you see the quality that's there. That he's just so good on the ball. He can be a defensive force, but it's not necessarily him. It's just tactically the way his team plays. Like, I was watching a Ross County game a few weeks ago, and they finished with 55 pass completion. It's that's the sort of number you see when the pitches are waterlogged in CONCACAF, right? Like, I think in Canada, US at the Gold Cup last week, that was what the pass percentage was like. This was like a normal sunny day. Well, it was evening, so it was like evening, no rain, turf pitch. Their pass completion was 55%. He just plays on a team that refuses to keep the ball, and I think that's kind of hurting him because he's being asked to hoof the ball a bit more. He's not getting a chance to control, stand on it a bit, and I think that's where Laturi's at his best. So yeah, when you consider something like that, you consider someone like a Nathan Saliba, who had an excellent season, has had a bit of an injury to start the year, so he hasn't played for CF Montreal, and he's someone they view very highly and they want to see. Samuel Piette's quietly had a couple good games to start the year. He was really good in Orlando. Other than a penalty shot, he maybe dodged a bit of a bullet on. He stepped up in Dallas on a big road win, and I thought he had a pretty good performance against Miami. He's just simply, if you're looking at a number 6, he's the most informed option. So I think that's what it comes down to. Yeah, especially I think if an Ali Ahmed is 100% and in the squad, it becomes a question of, does it come for Piette? Does it come for Osorio? But when you consider that, when you consider Laturi, when you consider Saliba's a bit hurt, I think Piette's just the plain out most informed at the moment, which might. I think that's fair to say, and I think it's something we're looking. He might not start, right? Like, it's a one game. There's a lot of options around him, but I think the fact that, look, yes, I'm familiar with some Chouanier as well. There are reasons why Piette could be in the squad.
Absolutely, and like Xavier's saying here, if Canada, again, if they have the lead late in the game and Piette doesn't start, because that's just not the system they wanted to go with, but it's 75th minute and you're closing in on maybe getting a cagey affair, Piette's a great guy to put on. Like you said, that little bulldog mentality. He knows CONCACAF. He knows what it takes to see out a match. And that's just a little bit what this team's lacking is, like I said, that natural 6. So I don't have an issue really with Piette coming in, considering the other options. I think it's always risky to go into a window with just a Eustachio, for example, right? Because there's just, he's not even a natural 6. He can do that role and he can do it well. But if there's a reason where, something needs to change, at least Piette gives you that other option. Like Alex said a little bit earlier, if we went to a 3-man midfield, Piette comes in the 6, it allows Eustachio to do something completely different than what he was doing. He gets to, progress the ball a little bit more up there with Kone. So there's no issues for me there. I like the midfield 5. I love the fact that Chouanier is in there. I think he's deserved a lot more call-ups than he's gotten over the past 2 years. I see a couple Montreal fans in here who are very excited as well. So I'm right there with you. But now we're going to move on to the wingers, and we're going to touch on a little bit, Alex, of some of the players that were actually left out, just because this was I think the wide positions are fascinating. Liam Miller is having a sensational season right now in the championship with Preston. He's playing in the left wing back role, but he is scoring. He's creating chances, getting assists. This is I think Liam Miller's best breakout season. I know he did it with Basel a few seasons ago, and then he kind of had a poor season last campaign. But to do it at the level of the championship when it's a 46-game grueling campaign, like, I love what he's doing right now. It's interesting because I know he's told us in an interview we did with him that he does not want to play in the wingback role before he got his move to Preston. because Basil's kind of forced him to play there a little bit. He said, I'm a winger. I want to be an inverted winger. I want to cut in. I want to take shots. I want to create. That's what I like to do. So it's interesting, though. He's a righty. They put him as the left wing back, but he's got a little bit of freedom to go forward, and we see what he can do with it. But I think he's a very intriguing player because on his form, I could see him maybe even getting into a starting 11, depending on how Biello sets up. But we have a Liam Miller. We have a Jacob Schaffelberg, who has just scored 3 goals in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And we have Tajon Buchanan. So only 3 wingers, again, unless I am missing somebody, and I don't think I am. So 3 wingers, which again, when me and Alex were talking about earlier, 5 center backs, 5 midfielders, 5 strikers. Screams to me a 3-5-2 before we even kick the ball. But we do have some wingers on there. And like I said, Schaffelberg, impact sub. We'll love to see him come off the bench. Same as Liam Miller can do, but maybe there's an opportunity for Miller to start. But looking at some of the players that were left off of this roster in those positions, we have a Jaden Nelson. We have a Brim, which I think probably surprised people. And then I guess Hoylett would obviously follow into that category as well. So Alex, looking at the wide positions, I guess they would be impact subs, right? Like you'd probably imagine Liam Miller and Jacob Schaffelberg coming off the bench, Buchanan sliding into that right wing back role. What's your thoughts on these 3? And do you think they all are deserving of this call compared to like a Brim, Hoylett, or who's the other player I just said? And Nelson.
Or Corbiano.
Or Corbiano. I forgot about Corbiano. Yes, and that was the other player I wanted to touch on. So thank you. Yes, Corbiano getting the move obviously to La Liga, and Alex will touch on him a little bit because I know. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think of this group that's called in, I think Liam Miller is a no-brainer. He's had a fantastic season in the championship. What I like is that, like you mentioned, I think it's a breakout season because at Basel, he showed he could score goals from that left wing in that first year. He was banging them in. It was great. So fun to watch. Like, man, I miss watching those Basel games, by the way, isn't it? He was fun to watch in those that year where just, he'd cut in from the left and he banged in some ridiculous goals. But you saw that in his game. But then what he saw is all of a sudden he had to play right side, right wing back, all these positions that have been unfamiliar with him, and he struggled or wasn't fully up to him. What I'm seeing now at Preston is a mature player. Like every time I watch him for Preston, I'm left impressed with just how much his decision making's improved when he plays on the right, and of course when he sometimes gets to play on the left, as he also still does. You can just see those natural inverted winger instincts kick in. But I think there was his goal a few weeks ago where he was on the right side, combined, cut in, spanked it on his left. Like it was all so instinctual. You're seeing those sort of decisive moments from him. Defensively, he's not a natural wing back. I think it's also helped by the fact that Preston are just kind of willing to be so much more aggressive with, their wide players and ask their midfielders to kind of cover. I think that suits Miller a bit more, and that's why maybe on this Canadian team where there's going to be a bit more emphasis on their wing backs to defend, maybe I see him a bit more late off the bench, but also you could always depend, right? You could always stagger one. You could ask Miller to be more attacking and you pair him with another guy you ask to be a bit more defensive and cover. So I think Miller's well deserved. I think Schaffelberg, I think I would have included him. I know when we did our squad 2-3 weeks ago, we didn't have him in, but I think with the way he started his season since, the goals he's scoring, the confidence he's playing with, scoring left foot bangers, scoring right foot bangers. Look, you gotta keep Schaffelberg in. So I think that's a good shout. He's the sort of energy that you want off the bench, right? Because you're also going to need some super subs. And I think what's nice with Schaffelberg is you can imagine any scenario. You're trailing, you're leading. You saw that at the Gold Cup. You throw him in. He creates chaos, and I don't know if it's the mullet just mesmerizing defenders, the speed, the dribbles. He has that chaos element. I like it. Really, I guess where things get interesting. Look, Tajon Buchanan's also in the squad, so I don't think that's a no-brainer. I think what's more interesting is you wonder if they could have brought in a fourth, because I think there would have been deserving arguments for either. I think, for example, you could have made a shout for a Brim just because, look, minutes have been hard to come by, but he's still putting up some goals, some assists in the Eredivisie. He's playing as more of a super sub role, but he's making things happen. For example, if you bring in a Russell Rowe, you wonder why not bring in a Brim who can play up front as a 9 and also play out wide. I think that could have given him a shout. I think for me, Corbiano would have been a no-brainer personally. I don't think you need 5 strikers. I think Corbiano, his season in Switzerland was excellent. He was like among the top 5% in Switzerland for, I think it was like assists, chance creation, key passes. dribbling, like all the chance creation metrics. He was like top 5% in that league, and he's gone to La Liga. Yeah, he's only made like 3 appearances, but he scored already. Like he's training at that high level. I think he just deserves a look based on that first half of the season as well as where he's at, because I think this is a move long term where this could help him. So I think those are the two you could have wondered for different reasons. Okay, you want more of a 9, you go for Brim. You want more of a winger, you go Corbianu. They both deserved a look. I think for Nelson, it's unfortunate because I think if this camp came 3 months ago, he's in, right? Like just he was off such a fantastic season, 10 plus assists, a lot of goals. I just think now it's come at an awkward time because you're in preseason. He hasn't even played competitive games yet. It's just a big ask. I think it's really unfortunate because 100,000% he also deserves a look. He could have very much made an inclusion because he could play as a 10, he could play as an 8, he could play as a 9, he could definitely play out wide as he used to for TFC. So I think for Nelson, it's just the timing of this camp. But certainly for Brim and Corbianu, with Corbianu in particular, I felt like the time was right for them.
It was funny because when I first looked at this roster, my jaw hit the floor, and then naturally when I picked it back up, I looked at it again, and the first thing that I honestly noticed was 5 strikers because I was counting them. Like, all right, 2 of the most important players I thought just for me to really believe in Biello was to see Bear and Ugbo in there, because what else can you do if you play this 3-5-2 system? It's natural to have 4 strikers in the squad. Laren and David will always be there, which leaves hopefully your 2 most informed strikers, which without a doubt is Ugbo and Bear. And then I saw Russell Rowe in there. I'm like, interesting. So I was trying to see what position was kind of like shafted in a way to make up for that extra position. And for me, it was the wingers. But then, like we kind of mentioned, 5 center backs, 5 strikers, 5 midfielders, 3-5-2. It makes sense. But like Russell Rowe, I know he's a young, talented player. I'm excited to see him in the roster. It just shows how much Biello must, rate the kid. But you do miss out on a chance to bring some speed, because if you're looking off the bench, I would go Ugbo, Bear before I would go Russell Rowe. But if you need someone like speed, like a Jacob Schaffelberg, like Brad's asking here, would you see Schaffelberg start, or do you think he's going to come off the bench? He's 100% going to come off the bench. There's no doubt about it. Biello's putting some doubt in my mind, but I really, really don't think that he will start a match. Schaff's the perfect type of player to change things up late in the match if you're looking for something. Jay Nelson's a similar type of player. Like Alex mentioned, Brim could have been that little bit of both. We've seen him play on both wings. We've seen him play on the right, cutting it on his left. We've seen him play on the left. We've seen him play as a striker. So like, there's a lot of different options, but he went for the extra striker. Now, I obviously have a soft spot for Corbianu. I was able to break his transfer to La Liga. It was a very cool moment. I was excited to do it. So I'm a little biased about him. But it seems crazy to me that the Canadian men's national team has a player playing in La Liga, in my opinion, the 3rd, maybe even 2nd best league in the world. And like Alex said, playing well off the bench, scoring goals. And we have a player in a top 2-3 league that we left off for somebody in Major League Soccer. Just something to think about, Alex. So when you got kind of lay it down like that, don't you think it seems like a little wild? I wonder what the reasoning is behind Corbianu. And to build on that, like you said, Alex, he had a really strong start to the season in Switzerland.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think it's something where, that's why I'm surprised when it comes down to it. That's the choice that's made. But then again, I think it's harsh on Schaffelberg to say that, because I think he's done very well with Nashville, and I think he's also shown well with Canada. So I think it's one where it's not either or, get in both, right? But I think definitely, when you come down to it, especially you heard so much from Herdman talking up the importance of getting your tier 1 players in. Corbianu's playing at a tier 1 level, and he's always had that tier 1 potential in a Wolves academy, right? Coming through and playing a Premier League game for Wolves. So I think it's something where it's a bit surprising that, he's after 5 loan stints, 6 loan stints, he's finally got to that tier 1 level and he's playing, and then you don't call him in. So definitely a bit of a surprise. I think he's someone where they should be looking at long term. You have to remember he's only 21, despite all of the, how long he's seemingly been around in that regard. I am a bit surprised not to see Corbian. I think he's really the one omission, because I think, again, you can make an argument for Ahmed just maybe being more beneficial to stay home with his club. But then I think, Corbiano is really the one where, like, oh, interesting, like La Liga winger. Like, I feel like that's something where on paper, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? It's kind of a no-brainer, and I think there definitely would have been room for him, especially because, again, you don't need 5 strikers for a one game in this window.
So and then that was kind of the point I was trying to drive home. It's like, our national team is growing. And despite us maybe not getting the results and having a pretty tough 2023, seeing players move abroad and seeing players do well abroad is so encouraging. Our national team has the talent to keep building and not regress. And that's what a lot of outsiders have seen and been like, oh, your national team had a really tough 2023. The hype of qualifying for this World Cup's over. You're going to go on a downward trajectory. That is not the case. But we're not at a place, I don't think, where we can leave players who are playing in the second or third best league in the world off of our roster when they're scoring goals. And that's just, like I said, maybe there's a reason behind it, but for me, like we've kind of said, it would make way more sense to keep those 4 strikers. Unfortunately for Russell Rowe, he probably would have been the one I would have left off, and then I would have kept someone like a Corbiano and reward someone who made a jump from Switzerland to Spain and is doing bits in there, and he scored a wonderful goal as well. But Alex, there is a little bit of breaking news before we get into the final roster slots, which is the striker. We booked a friendly against Mexico. Let me just bring it up here for you guys. A little surprised.
Texas, of all places.
So we're
another trip to Texas.
I was hoping that they would have lined one up like most national teams have 2 games this window. A lot of them are playing on the 23rd and the 26th. So I was doing a lot of research last night trying to see who would be available because I was really convinced that this, Blue would have made a really good statement. Like, all right, guys, not only hopefully we're going to qualify for Copa America, but then we're going to get that other second proper game in. And I just thought I couldn't find anyone who was even available anyways, but that was not the case. We were only going to have, from the looks of it, 1 match this window. But we do have a international friendly booked for the September window against CONCACAF rivals Mexico. See you in Texas is what they said, September 10th. It's Mexico. It's a decent opponent, but for me, Alex, this isn't exciting news. It's great that we even got a friendly. I'll never take that away. But again, we're looking within CONCACAF. We can. I'm guessing the money has something to do with it. It's in the United States. It's against Mexico. It's just, I don't know, not the most exciting news that we've gotten today.
Yeah, I think it's news, right? But I can't be mad because it's another game, right? It's another game, and like we saw last year, but they only played 11 games, including the Gold Cup. You can't turn your nose up at those anymore, and I think it's a positive sign that, of course, Kevin Blue officially only started this week, but he's obviously, since he's been named, he's already been putting his name kind of all over things. 1 week on the job, 2 friendlies. Like that's a positive sign, right? Like I think, look, if you can get to Copa America, you can get some friendlies in the fall. If this is friendly, heck yeah, just more games the better. I think this is what this national team needs. So I really don't have much to say on that regard. I think that's positive. I think really what's more interesting about this is what this could mean for the fall, because what we have to remember is that, Nations League, remember that, it's being played this month. Some teams might win a trophy. Unfortunately, Canada missed out on that opportunity. They traded the Nations League trophy for a group with Argentina. Well, of course, they have to beat Trinidad and Tobago. But no, jokes aside, there's more Nations League in the fall. And the format is yet to be announced for it. I'm going through right now. It appears what was originally announced was that there's no buys in the fall. There's supposed to be originally similar format to this year where there's no buys. And that's why there was a bit of frustration with Canada's loss to Jamaica, because it would have made sure they had to play Nations League. This kind of suggests to me that they might be tweaking the format and giving Canada, US, Mexico a chance to schedule some friendlies, because as things are currently planned, there's supposed to be League A games in September and October. So that's why I was a bit surprised seeing a September friendly right away against Mexico, who they could draw in Nations League theoretically, based on what things are saying here. So I do wonder if this means there'll be a tweak to the Nations League format this year, allowing Canada, US, and Mexico kind of be like, look, y'all get a bye, you get to play friendlies, get to prepare for the World Cup, and allow them. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting, because as it's planned, there's supposed to be Nations League games. So that's why I'm very curious to see this Mexico game.
Good research there, Alex. Very interesting. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I'm gonna just touch on a couple questions. It's interesting coming from both sides, because you have Mexico. Why isn't the game being played in Mexico this friendly? Then you have Canada. Why isn't the game being played in Canada? And I'm going to make it very simple for everyone out there who's wondering, because the money comes from the Americans. When Mexico plays in America, it is a money machine. And there's a famous quote that Herc always liked to tell me. He's mentioned it every time I've had him on for an interview. He says that the most popular soccer team in America is the Mexican men's national team. So it's why you see so many friendlies there. This is essentially a home game for Mexico. We're the away side. And I'm assuming, like Vince said here, that Mexico is probably footing everything. So Canada will probably get a good chunk of change to go down and play a home game for Mexico in the States. So, Alex, we have a somewhat running with time. We're still here for a bit, guys. So if you're with us in the stream today, drop a like. We are going to finish up wrapping up going through the strikers, and then Alex and I are going to finish off the stream by building our predicted starting 11 for this match, which I already got ready. So quickly, Alex, we've already kind of touched on it because it's the final position. There's 5 strikers on this roster, like we've talked about. It's David, it's Laren, Ugbo, Bear, and Russell Rowe. We talked about maybe why Russell Rowe isn't deserving, but I mean, like, he's scoring goals. He had a really nice goal over the weekend. He's a young talent. I'm really excited to see what his future has in store. More than likely will not feature in this match. But then I want to kind of just focus on, we know what David and Laren are. I want to focus on Brim and Ugbo. I feel like, Alex, again, we both do different versions of Canadians abroad. We both watch a lot of these two players. We both hype these players up left, right, and center. They're scoring goals in Europe for fun. They're both doing fantastic. Ike Ugbo is almost single-handedly saving Sheffield Wednesday from relegation. He's come in. I believe they've won. Don't quote me on it. 5 out of 6, something like that. They were in, like, I think a 10-point hole. They've dug their way out. Ugbo is on fire right now. He's scoring. He looks confident. And Theo Bair is doing some incredible things right now in Scotland with Motherwell, which is, a team that's somewhat towards the bottom of the table, but he is still scoring goals. We've interviewed him as well. He talked about how he wanted this call-up, how the dual national with Jamaica, Canada was focused on playing for Canada. He got his wish. He got the call-up. Anything you want to just quickly add on those two players before we go and build our squad?
I think it's nice to see them rewarded, right? Because Laren was a no-brainer. David was a no-brainer. David quietly having, I think, what is personally his best season yet, which is wild to say based on what people were saying 3-4 months ago. But for Ugbo and Bear, this is well-deserved. It's for Ugbo, it's nice because this is his first call since the 22 World Cup, which I find wild. It's been so long overdue for him to get a chance. But it's been stability at the club level, right? That's really what's hurt in Ugbo. He was at Troyes, they get relegated. He was struggling for minutes on that World Cup year. Then he makes that jump to Cardiff. Doesn't go the greatest for him. But this is what we're seeing from Ugbo is what he can be at his best. When you give him confidence, when you know you're going to start him every game, when you put him up front, he gives you goals. He's such a pure striker. And what I'm liking from this move at Wednesday is he's being more assertive. He's shooting more. He's actually already at Wednesday. He shot more, I think, after game 5, he'd had more shots than he did his whole stint at Cardiff. It's not like he's more assertive. The system's more fit for him. And he's showing me what he can do. And is why it was so exciting when he first came in. Like when you saw it at Genk, when you saw it at his first part at Troyes, where he was on fire in Ligue 1. Like you give him service, you give him confidence. He probably is Canada's best pure number 9. Like just in terms of back to goal, the way he finishes, his runs in the box, he makes Chicharito-like runs all the time. I love to use Chicharito as an example because for me, his movement was always world class. Like he makes those kinds of runs, and they're finding him. So I think it's well deserved. Bear, super exciting because it's been a long journey for him, but it's been a well deserved one. He made that move to Scotland. I think it was beginning of 22 with St. Johnstone, and it was a fight, right? It was getting minutes. He was getting minutes, but then he wasn't always taking it. And then he had a goal, he had a chance, and then he would fall out of favor. And it was just a battle. He makes this move to Motherwell, and now he's been on fire. And I think it's exactly what you want from a striker. 11 goals. He's top 5 in league scoring. Look, you can argue about the quality all you want in the Scottish Premier League, but the defenses are tough in that league. Like I watch games, and it's tough because Bear will just be getting, they see him. They see the 6'4" guy. They're honing in on him. They're grabbing him. They're pulling him. Like he gets in the box, they're doing everything to stop him. For him to score 11 goals, he's ahead of some of the big dogs on Celtic, Rangers with the goals he's scored. 11 goals, 4 assists speaks for itself. And what I like about him, he's really grown his game. Like before at the Whitecaps, he was really good at running into space, running into speed. But in Scotland, a lot of what they do is, again, they slow him down. They don't want him to get in any space. So he's really learned how to play 1-2 touch, back to goal, how to finish chances off with one touch, really make a lot of those number 9 movements. And you're seeing it with his goals. And then he's also showing what he can do when you give him space. Like, remember that goal in January where he, nearly broke a few ankles and chipped the keeper? That's what he also has in his locker when you do give him space. So I think it's been nice to see him learn that, yeah, I have that in my locker when I need be, but when it comes down to it, I can roll down my sleeves, be physical, and play that sort of game. And that's the sort of growth that you want to see from a striker like that.
Yeah, it's wild. My last point on it is just how happy I am to see players who are putting in the work week in, week out with their clubs, that are scoring goals and that are deserving of a call up, finally getting recognized. Because, like I said, there's been plenty of camps where I feel bad for players, and especially guys or goal scorers. You know what it's like when you're doing it for your club and you're thinking in the back of your head, like, I'm scoring goals, I'm doing everything I can. Why am I not getting looked at? And I also think the mentality right now, and I'm not going to get into it, but with Bear, this frustrations he had at St. John's Stone, as well as Ugbo and his frustrations over pretty much the course of last season, it hurts you mentally when you're a striker and you're having these rough patches. So I think also both of them are in the best headspace they can possibly be. And I think it's the right time to reintroduce them to the national team. Very excited for it. So I'm going to get into this quickly before, just because I think it's an excellent point. So credit here to Philip. Every player except for Osorio is under the age of 30 in this upcoming squad. That is what the definition should be of changing of the card. And we talked about this, Alex. So let's just very quickly go through it. So Crepeau, obviously, he's hanging up there at 29, but the other two keepers, 26 and 22. You get someone like Jonathan Sirwa, who's 22, and unfortunately for Borjan, 36, 80 caps. A great trade-off in terms of a keeper that's deserving and a young keeper as well. And then looking at the back line, you have a 23, 26, 25, 26, 23, 28, 18. I love it. And again, you see a lot of caps in there despite these mid-20s with Davies, Kamal Miller, Johnston, even Cornelius is kind of getting up there, even though 18 is not that much. But then you lose someone like a Steven Vittoria, 37 years old, 46 caps. You see a lot of caps here in the recent call-ups. 80 with Borjan. I know Larea and Atakubi are injured, but again, we're missing out on caps. Hoylett's got 62. Mark Anthony Kay is another player who was left out. Obviously, Hutch is retired, but then Lucas Cavallini, who I think is so far gone from the national team, we don't even really talk about him anymore. 31 years old, 40 caps, not a part of it. In the midfield, Osorio, the only one over 30, which is the 31-year-old is not even like he's mid-30s. Piet's 29, which is still wild. Eustachio's 27, Kone 21, Chouanier 25, and then the long list of forwards/wingers, 28, 24, 25, 24, 25, 24, 21, 24. Quickly, Alex, just very quickly, that's a great movement, right? One player over the age of 30.
I mean, look, what I think is fascinating is, look, age, whatever. That's all I'll say. Because form, right? It's form. And I think what we mentioned earlier was that all these guys in here, for the most part, like, even guys like Piet, who are a bit hot topic, form, right? They're in because of form. That's huge. Also, what's key for me is that the concept of leadership, leadership. Oh, you have to be 35 to be a leader. Look, there's one player over 30, yet there's a few guys who we said could be leaders. There's a bunch of guys who already have 30, 40 more caps, right? Like, that's what I find fascinating. We're talking about Jonathan David and Eustachio's and Davies as potential captains, right? Like, Davies has as many caps as a Vittoria does. Jonathan David as well. Like, Stefan Eustachio has 35 plus caps. It shows how long these guys have been around and how they're such key parts of the national team, and why it's exciting to see them step up. And hopefully we can see the likes of Chouanier with 1 cap, Theo Bair with 2 caps, Jason Russell-Rowe 4 caps, Jacob Schaffelberg, Ike Ukbo, all with lower caps. Now join them, right? And make this next generation, which I think is good.
Absolutely. So, Alex, give it a think, because it's time to try to build our starting 11. Give me 1 sec here to pull it up. So between the sticks, Alex, I will let you start. We kind of already touched it. Guys, in the comments, let us know for each position what you guys want to see. Please give Diffuse Rule a cap. I don't think it'll be. Unfortunately, I don't think it'll be this match.
Not as a starter, maybe.
Not as. You think maybe on the bench?
I mean, if he's it's the second competitive camp he's called into, right? Like, clearly there's appears to be some interest in representing Canada. Maybe this is the moment to just cap tie him, then allow him to focus on the U20s this summer, and then hopefully by the fall you can get a break to the club level and you're calling him in regularly. Look, there's a timeline that can make sense that all starts with him getting 5 minutes at the end of this game. Hopefully, if all goes right.
I like it. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it at all. But all right, between the sticks, Alex, Crepeau, is there anything you want to add? Is it just style or just more experience?
Bit of both. Style. He can play in that high line. He can play, in that sort of system. He's got experience. He's used to this team. I think for a game like this, you go for Crepeau. He deserves a shot. He's been in great form with Portland. Had another great game this weekend. Made some big saves, despite a hairy start from them. I think Crepeau for this camp makes sense. So from it.
All right, now I'm curious to see where you're going to go because, like I said, I think we're in a little two different minds. Just because I think Biello will go with Johnson, Cornelius, and Miller. Do you think he will do that? Are you hoping he won't? Like, I think we should try to build a team that we think he will do, even though that's hard to guess. But if you really don't think he will, let me know and we can talk about it.
Well, look, the way I see it, I'm like, clearly with a lot of these choices, because I think the argument you can make last camp was November. It was like, oh, is he even watching these games? Because you're calling in some of these guys who are not in form, right? Like a Vittoria, etc. Clearly, with a lot of the squad he's called in, he's been watching the games. Because look, even if the Russell Rowe, you can argue him. He had a great game this weekend for Columbus. All that to say, if you're watching the games right now, there's no reason why you see a Johnson at a center back. He should be out in a wider position. So that's why I kind of wonder, like, based on what squad we've called in, right? Like, and the options that are there, it just, I don't know. Johnson at center back has kind of been it's just not been the role for him lately for Canada. You can see it that he's just kind of hit a bit of a wall, right? Sometimes you get thrown into a position. He was great in the World Cup qualifiers at that right center back position. That's always the toughest thing. What do you do when you play top teams? What do you do when the scouting report kind of gets out on you and it's not your familiar position? I've kind of seen that. So look, I get that we probably see Miller, Cornelius, Johnson if you're putting that, but I just think that's a sign that you haven't really watched a lot of what has happened for Canada the last few games, and you haven't really watched what's happening at the club level. So that's what I'm just like.
Hey, bold Biello, Alex. We could have some fun with it. We could go bold because, like I said, he shocked me with this roster. So if you think there's a good chance, we can build this roster in a bold Biello kind of way if you want to. So let me know. Let me know what are the three. It's got to be realistic though. Like we can't just say Defougerol is going to start because I really can't see it. But if you think Waterman will start, let me know and we can do it.
Well, that's it. I think, look, you can put in two names. It's Miller, it's Cornelius. Those two are going to start. Let's not beat around the bush. Like they deserve the opportunity to play. Like Miller, he remains a leader. Cornelius had a great season with Malma. They've started competitive games. Let's just put those two. But really the debate becomes, does it end up being Waterman or does it end up being Bombito? Because I think that's what it would come down to, assuming you put Johnson out wide. Because Defougerol, hope your goal is maybe give him 5 off the bench to get that, you cap tie to get that experience. But
so if just for fun, let's build it that way. What about a 3-4-2-1 and like Buchanan and David can kind of be like the roam players? Would that work for you or not quite? You would want like a 1-2.
I mean, I could see that, like a David and Buchanan and
like.
Also, I wanted to check this before I said this. This sort of thing's interesting. Alistair Johnson's listed as a fullback outright on the squad. I don't know if that means anything, but there's 5 dudes listed as CBs. He's not one of them. Everyone, like even Schaffelberg's listed F fullback / forward. Miller's listed fullback / forward. Johnston's just straight up listed fullback. So I don't know. Make of that what you will. Sometimes that can mean nothing. I just find that interesting.
I'm gonna just take the decision out of your hands. I'm gonna go Waterman just because I think he's got more of a chance, and I think that he should for right now get the start. I like him there. So that's the back three. Cornelius through the middle, Miller, Waterman, and then
does Bombito? How many caps? Just curious because I don't know if you had that open. How many caps does Bombito versus Waterman have? I just want to.
That's actually interesting, Dan. But Bombito's got 4. Waterman has 2. Alex, you did he did a whole report on Bombito. Do you feel comfortable? Do you want to go Bombito over?
Well, it's just I wonder where they've both been in a lot of camps. Of course, Bombito had the advantage of the Gold Cup, where I think he played essentially all 4. I don't know. It's a fun debate to.
Hey, you did an article
let's
on
do
it.
Bold. Let's do bold Bombito. I'm not bold Bombito. Bold Biello, and he goes Bombito.
I think I gave him number 15. I sent you the numbers like I usually do. So I gave him 15, I think. But yeah, okay, I like it. You did an entire report on it. I love it, and I I've told you many times, Alex. I know you know this. I've told you my favorite position for him is outside right center back. So I think that's funny the way it, kind of works.
He has potential too, right? I think that's key. I think it was kind of a mention like of the center backs, he has the most potential. I see him like within a year or two making a jump to Europe. He's still at a good age. He's got all the physical tools. He's got all the technical tools. Like for him, you're a center back. You're looking at like, oh yeah, he has another level to hit too. So, and he's already playing at a good MLS level. He feels like a kind of guy you want to get embedded now. That's why that was kind of the point I was making too. That look, you can maybe make arguments that right now he might not be as good as a Waterman or some of the other names. But look, if you're looking 2-3 years in advance, you want to get him embedded now so that when he hits that potential, he'll be familiar with this team. So that's also worth discussing.
I think that's fair. I think we just did basically the hard part. We'll talk about it in a sec, but I think I can just fill out the rest of the roster. So it's going to be Crepeau between the sticks. Like we just talked about, the big debate came at the back. And a little, pushing up the pitch, but we go Bombito, Cornelius, Miller, right wing back. We have Johnston, left wing back Davies, Kone, Eustachio are two central midfielders. Buchanan, David, kind of like the free-ish roaming roles kind of thing, like your dual 10s. And then Laren up front, right? Is that the rest of it?
Yeah, I'd say that's about it. Switch Buchanan and David for semantics, just because Buchanan's played more left at club level. David played right for Canada back in the day.
There we go. So it's not unrealistic too, like the 3-4-2-1. Like it's not like we're going way to left field for this.
No, I think it's fair.
Right field.
What's nice is it's flexible, right? Because, for example, if you don't like Laren up front on his own, you can move a David up there. You can put an Ugbo as more, a pure number 9, like we mentioned. I think this midfield configuration is fair. I think you want the Kone stack to be, that like if, for example, you could switch the wing backs. Like there's just flexibility to kind of tweak things around based on what's going on. I don't know. I think this is a very good squad. I think this is a balance of a lot of things that could help Canada. You could have Johnston playing a bit more inverted if you're feeling you get a bit more overloaded in the midfield. There's flexibility here.
I like it. Actually, I like it. I was trying to think of a way, because I think the big debate in what you've talked about, Alex, is one, like you said, you want Bombito to start. 2, you really want to see Johnston out wide. But then I'm like, all right, well, how do we fit Tejan in here, and how can we do it in a system that works? And I think in this 3-4-2-1 system, it's similar to what Biello likes and is comfortable playing with. But I'm very curious to see the way how that front three would move with each other, because I can't 100% remember them ever, like the front three playing in this kind of way where you have that kind of free role for a David and a Buchanan. Like they could stretch the pitch. Buchanan can move over, David can drop in a little bit, kind of create as a 10. They can do it on the other way as well. And then Laren's up front. Like I don't know. It's an intriguing. I do like the look just on paper of this roster. I think it brings something a little bit different. This is bold Biello. This is what we came for.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think it could make sense, right? Because I think, for example, I was calling for Buchanan to play higher up the pitch last window because I felt like they lacked someone who could stretch the pitch. Let him play in that free role. You're kind of seeing Inzaghi of course, he's only played 2 games at Inter, but both games he's come in, it's kind of been like play exclusively on the left. I don't think he barely came past his own half line. Like he was just exclusively stretching the pitch, and he can do that. And I think with the Davies on the left, they can combine nicely, use that speed. I think David in a free role gets a lot out of him just because he's so good when you can get him involved in the game. And then Laren, as we see, I think that's my biggest area of growth I've seen for Laren ever since he's gone to Spain with Valladolid and now Mallorca. He can hold the line on his own. Like it's tough for him. Like there's games where he'll get 20, 30 touches. But he's just so annoying for defenders because he knows how to. He's a big body. He can be physically imposing. He just knows how to play back with goal, impose, force these defenders back. And I think that would free up David and Buchanan. And then what I like is like, yeah, if Laren's struggling in that, you can look to your bench like, all right, BK, well, that's what you also do for Sheffield Wednesday. Go lead the line. And yeah, you can always tweak, right? Like you can just, all right, it's not working. You can just throw David back up front, throw Buchanan out at wing back. Maybe you sub out a CV or you sub out Johnson. You throw on an Azorio or a 10 if you feel like you need or a Piet. Like there's flexibility that you can do within this. And I think this fixes a lot of problems because, like you got the solidity in midfield. You got a back three with speed. Like Miller and Bombito can both defend 1v1. Cornelius can be good in the air. Crepeau can play with the ball at his feet. Davies gets that free roll. We always ask him, but he also has more defensive responsibility. Johnston plays his more natural position. Look, I really like it.
I think that's fair, and that's the way we're gonna end it. I don't know if it's I could see it. I don't know exactly what Biello is going to do, but I mean, hey, bold Biello, the 3-4-2-1 with a very intriguing front three of Buchanan, David, and Laren. I think it could do some damage, but that is all the time we have on this stream today, guys. Over 150 of you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. Hopefully you guys liked the squad about as much as we did. The match is coming up very soon. March 23rd, we will be here with a ton of coverage here on OneSoccer. So if you guys are new to the channel, as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you soon. Cheers, friends.